and welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode we started a new war with Spain. However, their initial attack on Florida was a dismal failure after the AI really messed up an attack on our fort. We made an attack on the Spanish in Milan, hoping to take them out before all of the nearby regions rebelled against us. So we made an assault, and the enemy once again were quite willing to allow us to use whatever tactics would benefit us, so we cut them down. Voss, after having won that battle, then started making a run to join a new army that was going to march right into the heart of Spain itself. He didn't want to miss out on the action. Nassau in America moved to attack Georgia. A large Spanish army inside is now left under siege by him, but before we see that, Voss needs to attack Madrid itself to take it before the nearby Spanish armies can reinforce, so it's time for a fort assault. I'm curious to know, what is your estimate? I suspect you have an underhanded motive to that question, Mr. Voss, but if you must know, there are around 3,000 of them. Wrong. 4,000. What? I know you only exist to contradict me, but you have to give some thought to reasons, man. Clearly you didn't consider that the city guard of 1,000 will march to the fort the moment we approach. What city guard? You're making this up. No, I've just done this before. Precisely the message of this braid, don't you know? I shudder to think what would happen to these men if it was just old General Gaiden leading them. And I shudder to think what has become of our nation for the self-styled General Voss to be in charge of anything. Shudder away, my friend. Perhaps by the end of the day you'll see that we folk who did not buy our commissions, or find them waiting in the cradle, have rather a lot to do with winning battles. These men you lead once took a fort with no general at all, and a little help from my own disciples. Is that what you call your militia these days? You are truly mad. While I'm clearly different to you, I'll give you that. Whether I'm on the saner or the madder side shall be a matter for the scholars, won't it? All that matters to us is breaching those walls. What about the ropes? What about sending 4 men in at a time against 4,000? You must listen to yourself, Mr. Gaiden. No time for jokes. Serious business afoot. Now give me that bloody map and I'll get started. The attack on Madrid begins then, with Voss keeping his army at a distance to begin with. We're going to start by just bombarding the enemy's fort with our artillery pieces. This allows us to create breaches in the walls so we don't have to make dangerous climbs. Our infantry don't really have anything to do during this phase of the battle, but I do have some orders for them. We need to go and hide behind this hill because the guns on the fort itself will be firing back at us, so we need to make sure we're not in line of sight as much as we can. So here's the wall, already taking damage from fire and absolutely covered in Spanish troops. They've got a very large army inside this fort, and there are the guns, for some reason surrounded in dead enemy bodies. I think we got a few lucky hits. And also right on the other side of the map, have got a small team, 2 units of cav and 2 units of line infantry, who are going to try and come around and climb into the fort once the battle starts. But the enemy have so many troops that they've actually got this angle covered as well, so it's going to be difficult to get some sort of strategic surprise or anything by coming up an undefended part of the wall. They can easily react to my moves. So now, much later on in the battle, after much bombarding, we're at the verge of destroying one part of the wall. You can see the enemy troops are undecisive about what to do about this. Unfortunately, that indecision means they die as the fort suddenly destroys. Those walls go down very suddenly once their health is over. So the rest of the troops are going to now abandon this part of the wall, except this guy who appears to be shell-shocked and just stands staring at the bodies and the huge hole in the wall that used to be part of a regiment there. So that's not good for the Spanish. But of course, I'm not going to just attack now because I might as well open up another breach just to make life easier. I'm going to limber up my guns and actually move them closer because it took so long to bring down that part of the wall because the guns aren't particularly accurate. They can't even hit the wall when they're firing at longer ranges. So we're going to move in closer. Can't get too close because the enemy have mortars, but this position here on the next hill over was fine. So we were able to fire the next bit of wall along to start creating that breach, while the rest of my army still just waiting and doing absolutely nothing. So let's have a look at what it looks like when these guns are bringing down the wall. We've got 8 guns pounding into that wall, and it actually took a really long time to hit this wall down as well, because even this close they're not that accurate. But finally the wall goes, and once again the enemy had a regiment on the really damaged wall, so as it gets destroyed, loads of their men are lost. Very big damage to that regiment. So now we've got 2 openings. The enemy already starting to put troops on the ground behind these breaches, perhaps by accident. So I could now go on, move the guns around to another part of the fort and open up another one, but as you can see, the time limits actually already used half of the battle. We already used up half of the battle's time, I should say. So I was thinking I might not even have enough time to complete the assault if I bother with another breach. So we're going to start taking action now, and as we get close, the enemy's mortars will immediately start firing. So they're firing over here, where my cavalry and infantry are going to come over the ridge that's been protecting them. Luckily, the mortar shots falling just short there, very lucky with their opening volley. So the cavalry are leading, as you can see, and my basic plan is to send the cavalry into the breach. Ordinarily an extremely dangerous move. Luckily the enemy don't have bayonets, which means if my cav do get bogged down attempting to get into the fort, it's not such a big deal. My objective is actually just to take out the mortars, because if we can destroy them, that just gives us freedom to do whatever we want outside the fort, basically. So the infantry will slowly follow behind the cav, the mortars once again falling short with that volley. Very lucky for these infantry that all these misses are coming in so close. So the cav will begin their attack, and I've ordered them to walk through these regiments rather than combat them, and you can see they're sort of trying to do that, but they're really getting stuck, bogged between those infantry and the flaming ruins of the fort wall. So only a few men actually get through, immediately coming in to engage another infantry unit. So they didn't get very far into the fort. The enemy forming a square there, revealing that they have researched that. But from the other breach, we were not really contested, so I was able to just stream right in and go straight for the mortar team. So that's fantastic news. The mortars will be disabled by this attack. They're not going to be bothering us anymore. And the Farlock armed citizenry just next door to them are also going to try and get involved in this fight, and I thought, well, I might as well just stay here and fight these guys in melee, because we'll probably kill absolutely loads of them. My initial plan had been to just leave once I'd killed the mortars, but I thought, well, let's just hack our way through those Farlock armed citizenry. This team over here, I am trying to get them out. I'm trying to get all the cav away from this breach, because you can see it's just an absolute mess, and they're struggling to get out, unfortunately. The enemy's general going down there amongst the mortar team, so that's good. So you can see there the orders for them to leave. One unit is leaving, the other unit just seems to be too stuck. I think they keep getting drawn back into melee every time I give the order, and the enemy forming these multiple square formations. Very worried about the cavalry, it seems, and that's actually quite good, because it means these units are basically useless while they're just standing there forming their pretty squares and reforming them, as you can see, into a variety of new shapes to perhaps intimidate my units. But my cav right next to them are just going to ignore it. We're going to try and take the capture point to draw them out of their formation, and if they do come out, we'll just attack them again. There's something missing. There's still a weak spot in his formation. What is it? Think, damn it, think. There must be a way to... Wait. Of course. If we form an infantry square inside another square, then the power level of our formation will be squared. Yes, this is it. The secret that the ancient Chinese masters spoke of in their mysterious texts. The source of the unlimited power of the Roman Empire. The tactic that history tries to hide, for it's too powerful to be trusted in the hands of mere men. And now, this power is mine. First company, form a square around second company. Second company, form square. Third company, no, it's too powerful. Surely I should... Oh, damn it all, there's no time for hesitation. Third company, get inside second company and form square. As the cavalry attempt to escape, the infantry are now going to come in to replace them. And the enemy are very enthusiastic about this. You can see they're pouring their men out of the fort to meet my advance, so the melee starts before I'd expected it. This fight is mostly going to be melee based, since we are just ploughing into enemy ranks. We're going to be right around the corner, so not much chance here to set up firing lines. My troops have superior melee abilities, just slightly, so in the end I should win, but that does mean it's going to be a battle of attrition here, where losses will probably be heavy on both sides. The other approach to the fort here is less guarded, so my men are going to be able to charge through and get inside without immediately being contested. On the other side, it's the Varlock armed citizenry, already really damaged from their fight with the cavalry, which is still going on the edge there, some of their regiment just ignoring the whole situation by the looks of it. The enemy investing even more in their strategy of forming infantry squares here, probably not going to really help, but it might actually provide a nice stable barrier to stop me from charging in with my infantry as well, so perhaps it is a good idea. Other elements of their infantry are coming to meet my advance into the fort here, so once again it's going to descend into a deadly melee. Both sides going to take massive damage, but I'm just hoping the enemy will take more damage than me. The enemy have a slight numerical advantage, but I think we'll overcome it with our superior equipment and training, plus the support of the cavalry going quite well there. Here, these cavalry are totally surrounded by the enemy, but you can see they're doing a badass job. They're just standing on a pile of enemy bodies and cutting down the enemy on all sides. A fantastic job from these cavalry regiments. They are going to be gradually depleted and they can't really escape, but they're doing so much damage that it's really going to turn the battle. These men actually ended up fighting with part of the square, trying to get out of that square by the looks of it, so the square was used a little bit for its intended purpose. You can see they've actually formed another square now, so they've got two overlapping squares and then a square within a square, so two different kinds of a novel square formation. Not necessarily going to help them out, as my infantry are now just piling in a blobby mess and starting a huge messy melee all over the place. Some of the men even getting very ambitious and actually just piling through the square right onto the other side and only then stopping to fight. Probably not the best of ideas, because these guys are now really isolated and surrounded by the enemy, so they're probably going to go down. It's going to be up for the big blob of troops coming through the breach to actually start really damaging the enemy's numbers and getting us away into the fort. Now you'll remember I had those forces coming around the other side of the fort to climb up, and you can see the ropes there are present. I started it, but actually there was a pathfinding glitch that wasn't caught on camera, where most of my units got stuck on the corner of the fort and only a few went up. So I told them to abandon the idea and just come through the breaches, but some of the enemy citizenry decided to come out the side gate of the fort and actually fight them in melee on the way around. So I thought, fine, just stay there and fight with those guys. It's going to take them out of the fight and we should eventually win that battle. So inside the fort, my damaged cavalry are now less being used to fight the enemy, more just to draw them over to the infantry. We want to make sure the enemy don't set up any firing lines anywhere in the fort. We just want everyone to come into this mass melee so we can try and kill them all at once using our superior melee abilities. So as you can see, it's just a huge mess. This guy, this drummer we see here, actually fighting with his drumstick, brandishing it like a deadly blade. Occasionally he seems to switch it out for a sword, but he always goes back to the drumstick. Clearly the superior weapons, so good luck to him in this deadly engagement here. There's also a random lone cavalryman I spotted who is just fighting on his own along with the infantry. I don't know why he's abandoned his regiment, but he's doing pretty well. You can see he's leading the attack on the corner of our formation, the most dangerous part of the battle, and he's just slicing the enemy down and pushing them away. Unfortunately his horse is killed, so it didn't last forever, but a valiant performance while it lasted, and basically this melee just continues like that for pretty much the rest of the battle. I managed to get one unit through onto the other side to set up on the capture point to start the victory timer. They're also in a position to load up and fire on the units fighting nearby. Those volleys, though, not doing much, hit a lot of the windows on the building behind it seems, and not much of the enemy's infantry, so not making a big difference, but having the victory timer means we are going to win. You can see it counting down there. We never even got through this breach over here. The enemy defended it right until the end of the battle. You can see the floors covered in their bodies. Their units just wouldn't rout. They were already fighting to the last man. The rest of the fort, though, pretty much under our control as our forces maraud about, killing the survivors. So this extremely bloody battle ends in a victory. We lost 1,000 men, the enemy, though, losing 4,000 in the assault, mostly due to our superior melee abilities. And you can see here the cavalry did really well in terms of an exchange, getting absolutely hundreds of kills for their losses, each man killing many enemies before going down. So overall, looking very good for that little melee attack on Madrid. It means the city is ours. The capital of Spain has fallen to Voss. The people aren't going to be happy about it, as you can see, so we're going to have to work hard to try and get them to accept this new situation. We're going to need to repair the buildings as part of that. They've got this special building, the Palacio Real de Madrid, so I'll need to rustle up some money from elsewhere by cancelling constructions to try and repair all this, but we should be able to do that. Now I noticed, once I captured it, that there's actually a second Spanish army in Spain. I knew about the one in Gibraltar, but this one was new to me. So actually there are 2 stacks who could come and counterattack, and that's a lot more dangerous than I thought it was. If I'd known that was there, I might not have just marched on Madrid. So now, potentially a little bit dodgy. Luckily the fort doesn't retain the damage from the battle, so even if they attack right away, the fort will be intact. And it looks like that might be what they're going to do. They march up. I have the opportunity to intercept, but I'd rather not fight a field battle. I'd rather they try and attack the fort. Also in America, we see briefly there, they move to raid some of my territory, and then we jump back to Europe to see them go and besiege Madrid. But they don't attack right away, so that is interesting. Their other army just staying down here in Gibraltar, as it has done for pretty much the entire campaign, as far as we know. So just the 1 stack outside, that's okay, but if they're not going to attack the fort, then really we're probably going to have to sally out and fight a field battle against them, because there's no point waiting for them to either reinforce or starve us out, and we're not going to be reinforcing any time soon. So I'm going to make serious consideration for a field battle, but before that I'm going to switch over and have a look at what's going on in the Americas, just to stall this slightly difficult decision. That wasn't the answer I was expecting. So you're telling me that no one has any record of orders for Voss to take command of the campaign? And no word from General Gaydon, not at all? Why do I even sit here then? The military is following its own rules. Perhaps it isn't our place to care what happens to them. They got themselves surrounded and outnumbered without consulting us on the matter, and so they will by right have to get themselves out of there. This Voss character seems extremely dangerous if you ask me. No doubt this is his doing, rushing in like a crazed killer, not happy with having the stadtholders kiss his feet. It's remarkable that such a joke has lasted so long. Therefore, I say no to any reinforcements. In America, we have the arrival of a new Spanish army onto the scene. This half-stack, which, as you can see, can clearly threaten Florida and make an attack. We have Nassau still besieging the big army inside Georgia. I'm kind of reluctant to give up that siege to try and stop the army from back there, since we've already spent quite a lot of time trying to reduce their supplies. So we need to make a decision about what to do. That army could do a number of different attacks against us. I thought before we actually try and strategize against it, let's just see if Spain will go to peace, because that would help in Madrid as well. They won't. They reject my deal, although I did ask them to give me some tribal territory, but I'd like to get something that's not a white peace, since we are technically winning here. We also get a trade agreement with our new neighbor Portugal, so that's handy. Means they're unlikely to get up to no good, hopefully, over there on the Iberian Peninsula. So I'm going to move a force out of Lower Louisiana there. We've got a few units we can spare, and I need to decide what to do with them. The enemy might attack Florida, they might come back west to attack Louisiana, they might just attack infrastructure, they might do nothing at all. It's always hard to know with the AI, it's not hugely predictable. So I wasn't sure what to do. I was considering going after this one unit, but really that's not going to make any difference. We might as well bring most of these forces into Florida. So I'm just going to walk basically as far as I can towards the enemy. This might bait them to come back and fight me, and that would probably be okay. Avoid them doing any rear attacks on Nassau or an attack on Florida. And if they don't attack either of the targets or any of the targets, then we'll have an extra half stack to play with, and we can even the odds and perhaps make it worth the gamble of waiting to see if that settlement runs out of supplies, only having 1 turn left. But before any of that, we are going to have to deal with the situation in Madrid. As I said, there is no sense in waiting to see what happens here. It's only going to get worse for us. We have to attack them right now. This is our best chance. So the enemy army going to outnumber us, with our army still damaged from the assault. All of those line infantry units that took so many casualties in the melee will now have to go and fight full units. They've even got some elite units in their army, like those Royal Spanish Guard. They've also got some Marines, I think, and some specialist line infantry. So overall, looks like a challenging fight, and we have to win, and hopefully win with enough forces intact that if they move out their other main force, it won't be a disaster. I'm starting with an audacious forward deployment, setting up my first line basically right on the edge of the enemy's deployment zone, so immediately they're scrambling right in front of the army to form up because they were in a complete mess to start with. Their guns not set up either. That's going to slightly slow down their initial damage to our army, so that's handy. So they are going to be in musket range very quickly actually, and as they form up, our men are going to start bombarding down the hill towards the enemy. firing at this cavalry unit to start with, and the cavalry unit actually reacts to this by just continuing its advance, and they're going to try and come into melee despite appearing to be a gun cav unit. The rest of their line infantry are going to set up and just start a straight up line battle. They're going to be firing uphill, but actually the Spanish do have an advantage because their regular line infantry are just better than Dutch line infantry, unfortunately for us, so we're going to have to try and win by extending the line out to get more guns firing at once. So there's cavalry in the centre, they're marauding about, they look like they're trying to charge but they're not sure what, they're taking more and more shots as they try to make this decision. Finally they turn and start charging up the hill towards us, more and more men just being cut down there. Very good for our troops, but as they arrive at the top they aren't going to make it into the melee without routing, so that's good for them. They've lost so many men though that it's going to be difficult for them to fight through this, especially as that regiment forms into square to give it extra attack against cavalry. The enemy's morale will probably break pretty fast in this situation, especially because they're going to be shot by units to either side as they fight. So that manages to rout them, and they're going to go back down the hill, taking more shots as they go. So it's important for us to wipe out those enemy cavalry because we're really going to need our cavalry advantage to counter the enemy's infantry advantage. Here it looked like they were about to charge our line. You can see I'm forming a square in response, but actually they were just charging up gun cav to engage us at point blank range, and those guns actually really bringing our infantry down fast because they can all fire at once and fire through their own men, doing a lot of damage. I had a unit of course on their flank firing right into them, and I thought that would do a lot of damage to them, but it didn't really, so we're just killing a few with every volley. The square now deforming, ready to fire right into the front of that enemy cav unit, but taking loads of losses right away. So surprisingly effective actually, these scout gun cav, another unit there just fighting as a line infantry unit right in the centre. Here on the flank the enemy got a weird formation here, we're sort of surrounding them but the enemy just overpowering us with superior stats. Luckily a lot of their best infantry, including these guys here, are still forming up. They're sort of coming around towards my right flank and not being used in the battle, so that's giving us a temporary advantage. Other guys though, including their elite royal guards, have come up to point blank range for a line battle. They're in really good shape, so that line battle will probably go their way over time. We're almost defeating these scouts as well, which is good news, gradually taking them down, but they've done so much damage to us they might have already done all they need to do. Surprising admittedly, but now the surprise has passed, what then? They show their daring by throwing away their fort, but they must follow it up with skill at arms. They probably think that the men of Spain will simply bow to their aggression like some poxy mob of Italian blowhards, a childish idea incongruous with their childish strategy. We will fight to the last man if we have to. Their posturing will intimidate no true son of Spain. Madrid is our city, and these are our lands, and for these Dutchmen to claim otherwise is a blasphemy against Almighty God. Let our keen shots and solid hearts be guided by his hand as we restore our king and country to glory. I will see no surrender, no quarter, no stopping until the invaders are punished. On the left side, I'm starting a cavalry attack coming down from a high hill as we get a nice fast charge on these scouts and catch them before they skirmish. And the enemy actually rout even before they lose a single man, so they really don't like being in melee, and as they try to escape, we kill a decent number of them. We can't really chase them though because there's plenty of other things these cavalry need to be doing. It turned out the enemy had a hidden unit back here, these guerrillas, so I need to quickly charge these guys before they get a volley on us. Luckily, they're probably quite weak in melee given that they look like quite a light unit, and my cavalry were able to attack them because I think they were facing the wrong way when they first appeared, so that was all fine. The survivors of the enemy's initial cavalry attack were hanging around as well, so we had to fight those guys, and that's unfortunate because it's stopping me from getting through to attack the enemy's guns properly. Luckily, these guys dropped their siege pieces. They're going to go right back on though because we weren't able to defeat them, so unfortunate, but we'll be able to hack through slowly. On the front line, the deadly point-blank range combat is continuing, with the enemy looking like they have a nice formation, but only a thin firing line, whereas on our side, we have more men firing, but our formation's in a lot of disarray, casualties all over the place, and it's all been messed up. I think the artillery fire is causing some damage to our morale and integrity of our little formation there, but we're going to hold on and keep firing. Our men have really high morale thanks to Voss's bonuses as a commander, so it's pretty hard to actually take down one of our regiments. So here on the left, our cavalry attack eventually caused a few of the enemy infantry units to rout. They routed with a lot of men, so they are going to come back unfortunately, but it means we have some chances to maneuver over there. Meanwhile, far on the other side of the battlefield, there's also a good development. I sent out a couple of nearly dead cavalry units from the previous battle that I wasn't even intending to use to attack the enemy's general because he was for some reason out on his own, right on the extreme left of his army. Here's the man himself fighting on the edge of his formation, doing okay, dueling with his sword against my riders, but unfortunately for him, the rest of his bodyguards have basically been overwhelmed by my superior numbers. So he then attempts to escape, but he's escaping through the middle of my formation, and he's going to be chopped right down. So that's fantastic news. The enemy general is gone, but it doesn't really have any effect on the battle. The enemy's line infantry still fine to engage in these deadly fights, still quite confident, as it says here, to just keep firing at my men and still use their scouts as line infantry. They're just putting so much fire onto my line that it is really starting to do some seriously considerable damage. We're going to be doing that damage back to them, of course, so this is a battle of attrition. So it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to lose it, but it does mean there's going to be a big price for winning it. Now, back on the other side of the battlefield, the enemy have deployed some of their elite infantry to fire up at my men, and my men on the extreme left are in trouble. You can see this line looking really thin, getting cut down by the enemy's superior accuracy and reload skill. So we have the positioning advantage, but it's not really helping. The enemy just have loads of superior men. So we're going to now make another cavalry attack here on the left. These cavalry units were a little bit weak, but they were able to make a successful attack on this unit of light infantry, although they did actually shoot down a lot of them before they arrived. It wasn't the best of charges. So hopefully we can just wipe this infantry out of the battle. They do a lot of damage to us as well. Their melee stats are just so high that the usual cavalry tactics don't really work. We can't just rout a unit by charging into it. And of course that unit takes fire from the units behind it as well. Another cavalry brawl happening back on our right as the enemy send in their scouts to attack my cavalry, who had just about managed to rout an enemy infantry unit. So the scouts now going to enter into another battle of attrition. I think I have the advantage stats wise, although numbers wise it's about even. They formed a square nearby to stop me advancing my cavalry any further, but that's good for me because we're going to just snipe at that square with our remaining line infantry. So back to the left, where things are getting really dodgy. You can see how thin the line is. These units have lost basically all of their men. They're also taking artillery fire from the enemy's centre. Not good at all. They are wavering down to 40 or so men. Not good. So really the enemy do have a good chance to beat us there, but unfortunately they're losing on the rest of the battlefield, so it's not an enormous worry, but a real shame that we couldn't put more pressure onto them on this side of the field. So yes, the enemy's centre and the enemy's left are falling back, and my cavalry, having really secured a cavalry advantage, are now going to be attacking those routers to make sure they can't rejoin the battle. So this means the balance is going to start tipping in our favour, but on our left things are basically over. You can see all of our regiments are on the verge of destruction. They've lost almost all of their men, and they're actually out of ammunition as well at this point, so I'm going to start pulling them back. This unit actually routs the second I give the order to pull back. Those other two are going to get away. You can see they're just running back on top of that hill. So we need to reform to try and engage some of the enemy's best infantry here with our surviving infantry, and that's going to be possible because we're going to basically take the centre of the field. First my cavalry destroy the enemy's artillery positions, and the rest of my infantry are forming a new line. Going to form an L shape here so we can engage the enemy from two sides, using the units that have most of their troops left here to try and start the engagement with the enemy. So they're going to waste time reforming as they turn around, taking free shots, and I'm now going to use my cavalry advantage to really surround them. The generals are going to be riding up and down the lines to make sure morale remains steadfast. Both generals taking actually decent losses. Voss in particular losing almost half his men in that battle. He didn't take part in the fighting, he just took so much shot from moving around behind the lines and taking stray shots that it was really dangerous for him. But my cavalry now going to really hammer home the cavalry advantage. We're able to shatter one of the enemy's best infantry units there by just attacking it with all of my cavalry at once. All the cavs so tired, but just about able to start that melee and get the enemy going off the field, and that causes the remaining units to rout as well. So the battle is over. It was a very deadly battle. Voss lost half of his entire army fighting that fight. The Spanish losing more than double our losses, but they have another army, so that's not necessarily a strategic victory for the war in the Iberian Peninsula. We'll see how this all continues in the next episode. Two interpretations were possible: that Voss had conquered Spain in a single battle, or that Voss was trapped in a huge Catholic stronghold with little hope of relief and a hostile population. He was able to repel the first counterattack by the Spanish, but at the cost of most of the Dutch main force in Europe. The force of 4,000 that had marched on Madrid was now just 1,500 in number, with an entire nation to police and defend. For the military officers in Amsterdam, sending another army seemed like a strategy of doubling down, a gamble that might lead to total disaster. But Vos was, as ever, resourceful, immediately recruiting the enemies of the Spanish King Carlos II to join his forces. To outsiders, it didn't appear to be enough. Thanks for watching. We'll try to hold Madrid and decide the war in America next time in Sinews of War.